Hi everyone, my name is Olumide Idowu, and I'm super excited to have you again today on our new edition in September on Climate Wednesday. And it's my great pleasure to greet everyone that is watching me across the world that happy new month. And I'm sure that this month is going to be a very sustainable month for all of us, and how we are going to continue to engage and build more sustainable environment across Africa and across the world. This month we are focusing on ESG, and I'm sure everybody understand the concept of ESG that we are going to be talking about. ESG actually means using environmental, social, and governance factor to evaluate company countries on how far advanced they are with their sustainability, and how this concept is also related to climate justice. Because as we are moving closer to COP26, a lot of people are now talking about how do we demand for justice, how do we demand for environment justice, and it's a very big conversation that we want to see around the environmental space. We want to see around social and governance, because as we are demanding for transparency and accountability, we are also demanding for sustainability in aspect of CSR in different governments or in different sector. So today, as we kickstart this conversation, our guest today is going to be telling us more about understanding climate justice and ESG, that's environment, social, and governance standards. And I'm sure for you that joined us some weeks back, last month, we started the conversation on climate justice. And for the couple of months now, we're going to be talking on climate justice, because that's what almost all environmentalists, actors, people are talking about environmental justice. We'll be looking into this month and beyond COP26. So I'm going to bring on board today our guest, Mr. Mayokun, is going to be sharing with us on the topic of understanding climate justice, what it's all about, and how this is related to our environment, social, and governance standard. So, yes, so we have guests today. Welcome, Mr. Mayokun. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining from. Good morning too. I'm fine. It's a pleasure to be on this program. I'm
Yes,
honored
yes.
to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for bringing that up. Anywhere you are joining us from, all over the world, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. And some people are even doing good night. So I'm very happy that we
Yeah,
are able to do you, and we're going to be having this conversation. And a lot of people want to understand what the ESG, how is it related to, the standard, and how can we put it in the context of climate justice and looking at the environmental aspect of it as well. So, let us start the conversation. I would like to know, can you tell us about yourself, what you do, and what inspires you to do what you are doing? Thank you.
okay. Thank you very much. So I'll begin with a quick story about myself. I'm Mayokun Iyaomolere, and I hail from Ilaje in Ondo State. And that is why I'm an environmentalist today, my place of origin. And it just so happens that what made me come into the environment space is um, tied to the topic of this conversation today. So I grew up in my place, in my community, and Nigeria community, and it's a coastal area. It shares boundary with the Atlantic Ocean. So from time to time, we experience coastal flooding, and this has been happening since I've been younger. So anytime I hear news, hear a bit about coastal flooding, how it's affecting people, pursuing them from their homes, killing them actually, making them lose materials, properties worth millions. I feel so bad at all times. It's always an emotional moment for me, and I always wish that there was something I could do about it. So I finished my first degree in biology education, and after that, I wanted to do something more purposeful about solving the problem in my place. I took up a master's in environmental control and management, and that was how my foray into the environment field began. So when I got into the field, I got to know that the world was in a collectively bigger trouble, or no, not even was, it's still in a collectively bigger trouble, and waste crisis, climate crisis, biodiversity crisis here and there. So that really made me glued to the environment field. Later on, I found an organization called Plogga, which is solely risk management focused and climate change initiatives too. And but I still have and I'm pursuing my strong desire in starting to propose solutions to um, related disaster. I had my master's project in that for my area too. So yeah, that's basically an overview of it. And I'm an environmentalist. And, I look forward to an environmental sustainability conscious world where individuals and institutions you know, want to help to get a very sustainable plan.
Wow, wow, that was very, very interesting. I think a lot of people hearing us from everywhere now, we see that we've been able to get somebody that is very, very vast in the environment space, and somebody that can actually, create a conversation that will influence change. And I'm very happy that you are from a community that you can share, experience, especially from like here in Ogun State. Is a very in Ondo State, which is one of the coastal area, one of the community that is actually going to, help us to understand the issue of environmental sustainability. Thank you very much. And on behalf of International Climate Change Development Initiative and other environmentalists, I say thank you for what you are doing and how you have been impacting more generation across the globe. So thank you very much. Quick one, let's move close. Let's go into the conversation of today as we are talking about the ESG conversation. I think it's very important that people understand what ESG actually means to them. So we want you to give us a little bit background of this environmentalist, social, and governance conversation. What does it mean to you in relating to environment, climate justice, and sustainable development? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll begin with defining each of the terms. With ESG, ESG means environment, social, and governance. That's the meaning of ESG. So, and there are people we usually use it with words like ESG factors, ESG standards. That's like the most common one. So, environment, social, and governance. The environment is the first part. It deals with initiatives environmental policies, policies that
I think our speaker is having internet.
environmental.
Okay, you are back, right? Okay, you can continue.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, network glitch. So this ESG standards, they are actually adopted by companies, industries around the world, local and international companies. And what it means is they consider some environmental, social, and governance factors in their operations. Now, the environmental factors deals with how sensitive the company is to the environment. Now, if it's a production company that takes raw materials from the environment, what is the impact of our extraction in the environment? Are we affecting biodiversity? Are we polluting the land, the water, the air? In the process of production and the process of manufacturing, the emissions from our company, from our factory, how is it impacting the planet? How is it impacting the trees? How is it impacting the water? How is it impacting the birds? All bits of the environment. So that's what the environmental part of the ESG standard deal with. And the social part of it deals with the welfare of the workers in the industry or in the factory or in the firm that is being discussed. The social factors deals with how the staff of the organization of the institution or company or factory are being managed, the human resource and all of that. Why the governance deals basically with the leadership and accountability of the firm in question, how they manage their leadership, how they transit into new leadership, how transparent their books are, and all of that. So, but for the purpose of this discussion, I think more of our interaction or more of the conversation will switch towards the environmental part of the ESG. And that is, this does not mean that we are excluding the social part because there's an overlap of the environmental with the social and even with the governance part. But I always tell people that for everything we do on this planet, there's a playground which we all operate in. There's a source of all the resources that we use for social interactions, for political interactions, and that is the environment. If you really think about it, take a minute to process it. everything you are today, the clothes you're wearing, um, anything you're putting on right now, any accessory you're using, if you're using a phone to listen to this, you're using a system, if you're working in a factory, anywhere you are right now, just look around. Everything is tapped from the environment, everything that makes outside your body, your natural body, which is a constituent of the environment because we are part of the environment. Every other artificial thing is drawn from the environment. So this naturally places the environment as the most important part. Some people say I'm biased like that because I'm an environmentalist, but that's not the case. It's because everybody feeds, every other sector feeds from the environment. So we'll be dwelling more on the environmental standards of factories, of industries, of establishments, and then linking it up with climate justice. So let me quickly introduce climate justice. When I introduced myself earlier, I mentioned how I'm from the coastal area and how I'm always pained by the happenings in the coastal area. And even now, when I see pictures and videos, it still traumatizes me, and it's usually very emotional for me. Now, in my place in Ilage, there's active oil extraction going on by this oil company. And in one of the most historic communities in Ondo State, in Nigeria at large, many people do not know. The name of the community is Ayetoro. If you have a minute or after this, after listening to this, you can Google it. Ayetoro was a symbol of communism in Nigeria as in the late 1960s, and it was a place where white men used to come around, Europeans used to come to interact with Nigerians and develop local technology. But also in the late 1950s and in the early 1960s, oil was discovered in that area. And when the first oil extraction took place, it led to land debasement. It affected the terrain, the soil properties of the area, and the community began to sink. This is a community that is already close to the Atlantic Ocean, so we know that the mean sea level rise of the area, the elevation of the area is low. Now, you begin oil exploration, and it contributes to debasing the land further, and buildings and properties in the community begin to sink into the soil. And ordinarily, this is a community that has a muddy kind of soil where you don't there are very very few cement houses. Most people build houses with plants and all of that raised in water. Because the soil is muddy, the cement will naturally sink. And you begin oil exploration. Back then there was only one big major cement building. When the oil exploration began, the building began to sink. Till today, the building is still sinking. It's a two-story building. The first level is almost completely sunk in the soil. Now, I told that story to help us come into the light of climate justice. Maybe we would call that more of environmental justice. Sometimes people use environmental justice and climate justice interchangeably, but climate tends to focus more on the whole global warming climate change concept. The environmental justice draws more on other elements of the environment. Now, that is a community. You are getting resources from this community for the benefit of the nation, but you are leaving these people, the inhabitants of this community, you are leaving them in peril, and you are not doing anything about it. Now there's a demand for environmental justice. So that is the foundation. And this is happening not only in Ilaje, because since then, oil has been discovered in many other parts of Nigeria, in the Niger Delta area, and now we are even hearing news of discoveries in the National Water. And we know that this is the mainstay of our economy. These are the things that help us to stand as a nation, as a country. And you're taking so much resources from these people, and yet you are leaving them destroyed. You're not doing anything tangible to give these people better life. So there will be a demand for justice. And because this kind of justice is tilted towards the spoiling of the environment where you're extracting these resources, that is where the concept of climate justice and environmental justice, climate justice comes in. So I hope that laid the foundation. So dwelling more of
Yeah,
climate justice in particular, okay,
yeah.
dwelling more of
Thank
climate
thank you
justice
very
in particular, there are dozens, and there are emissions from these industries. Now we complain of global warming climate change, which is as a result of human emissions, and most of these emissions are from industries. They are from the developed nations. They are from the first world countries, and there are some countries here in Africa. in Nigeria, for example, that contribute less to this whole global warming menace. Our emission profile is low. Nigeria, for example, contributes just about 1.1% to the global emission index. And yet we are part of the countries that suffer most impact of climate change, of global warming, of climate change. So there's also a demand for climate justice. How can bigger countries be polluting, be the major polluters, and the smaller countries are the ones paying much more dearly for it? So that brings in the concept of climate justice beyond the local environment, also at a global scale.
Wow, wow, that's very, very more details. Like I was like I'm listening to a professor, and I'm sure that a lot of people listening to us today actually get to understand the concept and the idea behind the ESG, the environment, social, and the governance. And I'm very also happy the way you explain each of these key points because they are very, very important for us to understand how they are related to different companies, different institutions, and different individuals as well. I'm so happy because another thing is you've been able to explain and relate this. Even actually, the next question I wanted to ask you, you've already touched on that question very well, relating it to communities that are really affected and how they are also reacting to those environmental issues. Like you said, some people use environmental justice and some people use climate. For me as well, I think environmental justice actually explain more of the impact we are seeing now, and I think is a human impact as well. So it's very very it's very very important that we keep talking about how we can, change people's mindsets in the issue of environmental justice, climate justice, and how companies are also reacting to the standard and to the action that they are contributing. So, thank you very much, Mr. Mayokun, for that explanation. And also, before I go to my next question, the way you also give us a good overview of your community, and that is another thing that I think a lot of people need to understand, that we have so many communities across the world that are yet to be discovered, that are actually producing and contributing to the environmental issues that we see now. But I will say that it's very, very important that if anybody is watching us now, we should listen to some key point that you are raising about case study ideas that you are bringing on board, because those are the things that will give us that standard that we're looking at and how people are reacting to the environmental issue. So let me quickly go. You've already answered my second question. So let me move to the third question. So, what are the ways in which, because we are talking about climate justice in relation to the ESG, what are the ways do you think, as an individual, as company, as government, we can actually achieve climate justice?
Okay, thank you. So I'll take that from two perspectives or from two angles. I'm going to begin in the local community and I'll also deal on the national and international level. Now, the local community, I'll bring it back home to Nigeria again and I'll make a case for the Niger Delta region of Nigeria. Now, we are taking oil from us for the development of the nation, the country. I'm a Niger Delta, so when I say us, I'm referring to everybody in the Niger Delta area. We are taking oil from this region and we are using it for development. And it's no news that that is what the country thrives on. Ordinarily, in an ideal system, I don't know, maybe it's only me that thinks that way, but I think other people share the thought. You're supposed to even cater more for these persons that produce the resources that the country feeds on. But you leave them dejected, you leave them abjected in poverty, and you don't really do enough. I would not say you're not doing anything or the government is not doing anything, but it's not enough, to make these people to upgrade the standard of living of these people, to make these people have better environment. Now, for as the individuals in this community, it begins from the place of um, sincerely wanting change and actually going for the change and actually lending your voice to the change. Now, we are local communities. We are poor and we are more exposed and susceptible to the adverse environmental effects that comes from exploration of oil activities in our zone. And this just predisposes us to more harm, to more hazard. The recent IPCC report shows that there will be more extreme weather events, coastal flooding, rainfall, and all that. And it is the people in this area with poor environmental conditions that will be most affected. I'm still on the local level now. It is us that say it is those of us that stay in this area that will be most affected because outside the fact that we are poor, we have been impoverished, we don't also have the facility to adapt or to cope. And that is why you see many Niger Deltans ask for government to come and build structures or to come and set up structures or systems that will help them to, you have already done the damage, but come and set up something that will help us cope, that will help us adapt to the adverse effects of this, negative impact it's had on our environment. So as individuals, at community level, on a personal level, you have to lend your voice to this cause, to this campaign. And I've been saying so much of the Niger Delta because it's a typical example. And many of us in other parts, maybe you're not from the Niger Delta, you're from another region in Nigeria, the effect gets to you one way or another. Whether it's security crisis, because when it gets to a level where everybody becomes agitated and the next thing is demonstrations and militancy and all that, but that's a topic for another day. So it gets to you eventually, even the environmental effect, um, because if these places are affected, if these places, for example, are submerged as a result of coastal flooding, the water will one day get to your place. Maybe it will be many years from now and all that, but the environmental effects will also affect you. So if you understand this, you understand that as an individual, you need to lend your voice to the cause of proper ESG standards. Now, these companies that are operating in these zones in Nigeria, is there a proper framework that guides their ESG policy? In many developed nations, in some developed nations, probably not many, they have bodies that regulate this ESG standard. Beyond corporate social responsibility, beyond CSR, people are pushing now for corporate sustainability because corporate social responsibility could just look like, we just people now interpret it as just a look good appearance for companies, just to make us look good. We know we are doing this, we are doing this. Okay, we just let's execute a project that will stand for 1 month, 2 months, and or people will see us in good light. But beyond that, we want something long term. We want something that will show that you really consider the environmental impact of your operations, the social impact of your operations on the people that are feeling the negative effects of these your operations. So individuals have to raise their voices as much as you are doing personal, making personal efforts to help to improve the climate situation around you. You have to raise your voices and lend your voice to causes that will push for policies and advocacy and education of other persons about the state our environment is in, about how our environment is getting deteriorated as a result of the operation of industries, as a result of the operation of companies, whatever kind of company they are. So it begins from a place of understanding yourself first of all, then educating others so that they can come to this consciousness. Because if you are moving as a one-man boko, of course you can have an effect, you can impact others and they can gain. But when you intentionally educate others about this whole environmental sustainability concept and how they can come on board, we have larger voices, and the more the merrier. Our voices are louder, and we can much more easily push for policy change, for organized agencies that will monitor the ESG standards of these companies and that will ensure that they actually keep to it, and they don't break the acceptable standards that are approved for them. So that's for the community level. Now for the global level, Nigeria, as I mentioned earlier, contributes just 1.1% to to global warming. Our emission index is just 1.1%. And there are countries that contribute as high as 30% and even more. And this person, they are still building more factories. They are still doing a lot of emissions. And here we are also, we are not doing so much, but we are still suffering the event and the effects of their activities. I've been saying something recently that Africa is the lungs of the earth because most other continents are very much more polluted. And the way the climate system works, it brings some of this pollution and comes to negatively impact us in this part of the world. So we are also at a disadvantage. So the need for climate justice at a global level. So the international agencies, the United Nations, for example, need to set up standards that um, companies over there in the developed part of the world we adhere to. And although some of it is already going on, But these countries need to be much more responsible for their negative environmental footprint. And that's why we see some grants come to Africa and support, but it's still not enough. Be honest with it, it is not enough. It does not in any way measure up to the negative impact that we are bearing as a country, as a continent, based on what these people are doing. So they need to, beyond just sending in money and all that, beyond attending all these conferences, they really need to set up structures that will help us to adapt and cope better to the negative impact of climate change. And our government, there needs to be a strong political will on the part of our government because they have to make a case for us at the global level, at the United Nations level. And that takes me back to the community instance I gave earlier. There's no way the government would raise its voice for a country, for Nigeria, for example, if there's nobody pinching the government back at home that, come on, this has to change. If the citizens back at home are comfortable with the situation and they are not making any fuss about it, the government might not be moved to really act. We know what's obtained for Nigeria. So even when we make noise sometimes, we still don't get the desired benefit. So we cannot afford to keep quiet at the local level because it is our noise that would, push the government to also make noise at the global level and will help to bring these defaulters, these big polluters, to come and set up structures or to support with necessary funds and facilities that will help us to cope better to the effects of climate change. So do your part as an individual, educate people, bring more people on board the consciousness of the whole environmental injustice going on, and together we can call the government, sorry, to get in action, and the government on their own part would also call these bigger nations to order, and I think at the end, all will be better for it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Mayokun. I don't know how to explain what you have actually, share with us now, but I can say that these details have been able to give people more understanding of how we can build a sustainable future for Africa and for Nigeria and for other global entity. And it's also very important that we also understand the impact this is on people and how, as an individual and as a government and as a company, private, we can achieve climate justice. And it is something that is a conversation that we need to continue to have
I'm
day by
sorry, I don't know
day.
if you can hear me. I have a little problem with my audio.
I can hear you very well. I can hear you.
To
Can you
sort
hear
it
me?
out.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Maybe you have to unmute your mic. Hello? Okay, so I think we are having a little problem from our guests. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I think maybe
Okay.
you should disconnect your
I'm still
earpiece.
unable to hear you at my end.
Yeah, I think is your earpiece. Maybe you should disconnect your earpiece from your phone. Can you hear me now?
Sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I'm trying to sort out this audio crisis.
Yeah, sure. That's why just disconnect your earpiece, your earphone, then I'm sure you'll be able to hear me when you remove the earpiece. Can you hear me now? Okay, so our speaker have been sharing with us understanding climate justice and the ESG standards. And we are very happy because he has been able to explain some key value and how to address climate justice, both on the local level and on the global level, and which I'm sure that everybody have been able to grab and pick one or two things from what he has been telling us. We need to keep advocating for climate justice. We need to step up our conversation, and we need to start talking about how we can involve more other younger generation, older generation, and people that are all interested in making change in their local community. And looking at the environmental part of it, we need to start talking a lot about it, the social and the governance, which one of the key aspect is the governance part of it, because we've seen a lot of political conversation, political will issues, and a lot of people are trying to see how they can engage the government to take responsibility and to make sure they are accountable and transparent in making sure that things work out in the space. So it's very important that as an individual, we need to start looking at our own contribution in making sure that the environment is more sustainable for us. So, Mr. Mayokun, can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I think our guest is still having a little problem. So, if you are watching us from anywhere across the world, you can drop your questions in the chat box, whether you are watching from YouTube, watching from Twitter, and watching from Facebook. We are stream live in on those platform on Climate Wednesday. You can check our platform on those chapter on those platform International Climate Change Development Initiative. I'm very happy because this conversation this month is looking at those three angles, and now climate justice is actually related to them. We are looking at the environmental part of it. We are looking at the social and the governance factor on how to evaluate companies and countries on how far advanced they are with their sustainability plans. And this is something that a lot of people want to see, and how we are approaching to ESG investment, how we are also talking about the notion of climate justice, how it has been a conversation of awareness to create more greater demand for investment and for promotion across the value chain. So that is what we have been talking about, and our speaker have been doing justice. I think I need to bring him back now so that we try to conclude and come. Mr. Mayokun, can you hear me now?
Um, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Can you hear me? I think you need to disconnect your earphone from the conversation so that, or from the call. You'll be able to hear me if you can do that, because hello, can you hear me now? Hello, Mr. Mayokun. Hello. Okay, so that's how one of the climate crises we are seeing now. Connectivity is also a problem to disseminate information, and I think that's another thing we need to look into. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm so sorry for the
No, no,
break
no,
in transmission.
no problem. It happens. It
Network
happens.
plus connection issues here.
So
Wow,
can you
so
hear
so
me?
sorry. Yes, I can hear you clearly now. It's all good.
Okay, so not to waste too much of our time, let me go straight to our next question so that we can move on. So, how has this ESG standard be incorporated towards achieving climate justice? How do you think they have been
Okay,
incorporated?
yeah,
Because we
thank you
need
for
to
that.
do more. All right, you have the floor.
Okay, so how has the ESG standards been incorporated into achieving climate justice? I laid a foundation earlier that companies and industries around the world and firms are trying to set up ESG standards. It's actually kind of a novel concept, not totally new, but companies are just trying to take it up now to make it part of their organization settings. And this is because most investors now are looking beyond just investing in a company for profit. Uh, Immediate, of course, investors don't just look forward to immediate profit. They think of the long term and the associated risk with that company. But beyond the regular profits, the profit margin and all of that they will get from the company, they want to see a company, they want to see firms, they want to see organizations and setups that are more humane, that understand that humans um, face problems due to the operations of their industries, and that they want to invest with um, firms that are actually helping to solve these human problems while also providing goods and services or whatever it is the firm is about. So individuals and investors that want to invest now, some of them look for companies with high ESG standards, and it's beyond just saying that we have high ESG standards as a company. There are actually annual reports that should be submitted, that should be made provided for public consumption. And this will help to inform investors and companies to invest in. And this naturally presents a company that is um, transparent enough with their ESG publications, presents them in a good light. And when an investor comes, they see that, oh, these persons are not just about producing this and that. They are also taking care of the environment because of the concept of sustainability. So they are looking beyond now, beyond just using all the available resources and just tapping and making their own profit. They are also thinking of um, of the incoming generation, of the future possibilities, and they are not destroying the future potentials that the generations that will come will be part of. So investors, from the place of investors, ESG helps investors to decide companies to invest in, and on the ground of climate change, on the ground of how much they are contributing or how less they are contributing to climate change, and effort that they are making to help to remediate the climate change situation. And also, in countries where governments have set up ESG standards for different types of companies to abide with, it helps to carefully observe and assess these companies and make sure that they're actually making efforts to reduce their carbon footprint. Now, the target is that by 2050, or by 2050, every country will be operating at net zero emission level. Now, when we say net zero, we don't mean that a company would have no emissions at all. We don't mean that industries and all that would be using very fine, very green technologies that would have no emissions at all. What we are saying is that as they are releasing into the environment, they are also setting up initiatives and structures that would also take away the same amount of carbon from the environment. So that's the meaning of net zero. So ESG standards set up by government has uh, helped to assess these companies much more and actually ensure that they are following the set standard for the betterment of the environment. So the summary is that the benefit of ESG in climate justice is that it really helps us to see thoroughly through a company. That is if the companies are being transparent with their reports too. But of course, there are agencies that are set up to actually do this assessment. So it helps companies um, to make efforts for the betterment of the environment towards the vision of a net zero impact. And when investors understand that this company is beyond just profit, they are also considering the environment in their whole cost of production. They know who best to invest with, and all this are for the betterment of the climate system around the world. And it helps to, actually fulfill the dream of climate justice around the planet.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayokun. That is very, very key. And I think a lot of people that have been hearing us from across the world, we understand that it is very, very key that we keep talking about this, and we keep seeing that the standard that need to be incorporated towards achieving climate justice is something that is very, very important. So thank you very much for that. And let's go to the next question so that we don't waste much of our time today. Are there issues towards its actualization? And if yes, what are they and how can they be addressed?
Okay. Yes, of course, there are issues like every other process or system. There are usually challenges, and but one of the biggest issues with climate justice and ESG standards is transparency of organizations. That is of the involved companies. Transparency. Now we can release a report and say this is our ESG report for so year, but it is one thing to release a report, and it is one thing to release the actual report that actually states our environmental footprint or our climate footprint. So that is why that's an issue, transparency on the part of the organizations that subscribe to this ESG standard. And that is why systems or agencies or initiatives, structures need to be put in place to actually do a monitoring and evaluation based on the reports of these industries. Okay, this is the report you have given us that this is your climate footprint, your environmental footprint. So we are still coming to your company, we are still coming to look at your establishment to assess, to look or to see if exactly you provided the right numbers, or you cut off some numbers, and you're just making yourself look good. So structures need to be put in place to actually ensure that the reports that are being submitted by these firms are correct. And even before that, the very important thing is that countries as a whole, countries need to subscribe to this ESG standards concept. Countries need to make it a priority. Now, I know in Nigeria, for example, we have agencies, NESRIA, NOSDA, and all of these that environmental protection agencies do that um, monitor activities of industries and ensure that they are functioning within the laid down guidelines. Now, that is one thing. They are laid down their environmental standards. You should not emit beyond this point or that. You should not do this. Now, these agencies, they are functioning, but they are not doing enough. So, and since this ESG standard concept um, is getting
Our speaker has gone again. I think
global
that's
attention, and it's really working.
okay.
Sorry, I'm back. Network glitch. So even if we
Yeah,
are not setting it up newly, we can bring up a system whether we are still going to use the existing agencies that would make sure, again, it is about the effectiveness and efficiency of the structures that we are setting up, that will make sure that will be binding on all these companies and industries and factories and firms and organizations, that will make sure that they actually subscribe to this package and are actually, you know, following the laid down standards. And when they release reports, we do assessment of this report and make sure it is correct. And we find when they are defaulters, we penalize them. So this would involve some policy change. This would involve some serious political will. But the question is, are there challenges? Yes, there are challenges. One of the challenges is political will. Another is transparency on the part of the organizations, the industries that are taking up this ESG standard. So if we can find a way to cement this political will and make our government actually push for companies and industries to follow or to subscribe to these ESG standards, then we can monitor their operations and ensure they are transparent enough. And the place of political will, like I mentioned earlier again, would also come when individuals and you know groups of people, organizations, NGOs, advocacy groups, and all of that are pushing. When we continue to push, that is how we would ensure that the government really takes it on and put in all the political energy that is needed to set up this framework and make companies abide by it.
thank you very much, Mr. Mayokun. That is something that I think if anybody is hearing us from anywhere around the world, you need to understand the importance and how the issues towards it, actualizing this is very, very important. And Mr. Mayokun has also shared with us why we need to start looking at it critically and to make sure that we get the justice that we are looking towards on the environment issue and on the human, economic, environment, and social issue. Thank you very much. And I can say that you have been able to enlighten us today, to be very sincere, touching on every aspect, not only talking from local angle, you're also talking from the global scene, and which I think is one of the key conversation a lot of people want to hear and listen to. So thank you very much. As we close this conversation, and I'm very sure that a lot of people have been able to understand climate justice and the ESG standard, and we will continue to have this conversation for the next 1 month, for the next 5 Wednesdays that we're having in this month of September. Thank you so much. And I want to let us close with can you tell us one message you would like to leave with our audience on this issue of climate justice and ESG standards? Thank you.
Okay, it's been a wonderful time here. Even when the network and all of that wanted to stabilize us. But so my final word would be that let's understand that um, every action um, affects us in the environment, and we are advocates of individual efforts to make the environment a better place. Don't drop your waste on the ground, put it in the dustbin, plant trees, this and that. But now there's something even much more bigger than all of this. Those are important, and when many people do it, it amounts to many. But there's something bigger than this, and that is actually making sure that our government subscribes to this whole concept of environmental justice, because there's just so much we can do. There's little we can achieve if the government is not in on all is not in and serious about environmental justice. So even when we are clamoring, when we are pushing, when we are educating others, we must make our noise to the level of making sure the government gets on board. Because if the government does not or do not get on board, it's there's just little you can do. It's capped at a minimum. But when the government is in on it, it just seems limitless. And so in whatever area you are, in whatever part of Nigeria you are, as much as possible, lend your voice to environmental causes. Because now the extreme rainfall, the flooding events, the extreme sunshine, it affects everybody in the country. So lend your voice to these causes so that we can have a better future. And think about your children that you bring into the world. If the conditions are so harsh for us now, and we say things are getting worse environment wise, how do you think it would be for them? So think about that and lend your energy, lend your resources to these causes that try to, call the attention of the government to promote environmental justice in the areas where it is needed. And also, when we are able to do this locally, our country will be more energized and better positioned to also make a call for climate justice and environmental justice at the global level so that we can hold these big polluters, these bigger countries to ransom and actually make them pay for all these negative environmental impacts they are making us go through as less developed or as developing countries, not less developed, developing countries. So lend your voice to this cause, lend your energy to it, and continue to do your best. And we hope one day that we eventually and truly achieve climate and environmental justice for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Mr. Mayokun Iyaomolere. Thank you so much for giving that voice to the people and the planet. I really want to appreciate you for having you today on the first edition of another Climate Wednesday, focusing on ESG climate justice. It's a very wonderful moment, and I'm very happy that you actually finally come to be one of the guests again on Climate Wednesday. It's so wonderful for us. On behalf of my team and other young activists across the world, we say thank you for sharing knowledge and for giving us the understanding of the ESG standards and how these are actually related to the climate justice and environmental justice. Thank you very much. And I'm very sure you have a very lovely week and lovely day ahead. Thank you and have a
Thank you
good
very
day.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. It was, let me say, a very wonderful moment with Mr. Mayokun today, and we've kick off today's conversation on the understanding climate justice and the ESG standard. And I'm very sure that what Mr. Mayokun have explained to us have shown us that we have a lot of work to do. We need to raise more voices on environmental justice. We need to keep hammering on our government to do the right thing and to make them accountable for every act of environmental aspect of our life. So it's a wonderful moment today, and I'm very happy that we will continue to have this conversation for the next 1 month on environment, sustainability, and governance. Thank you so much. And I wish you all the best. We can drop your questions for our speaker, and we continue to hear from you from anywhere. He's going to respond to them. And if you still want to do more by engaging him, you can reach him out on Twitter at Mayokun, or go and check out the organization Plugin Nigeria. They can also give you more understanding of what they are doing and how they are making sure that they are creating more voices on environmental sustainability. Thank you so much and have a blessed evening. And see you next week for another edition of Climate Wednesday. Thank you.